So greetings to everyone. I'm Victor Asachi from Yalantis, where we're reshaping the world of IoT software engineering. We craft custom software solutions that help companies across a diversity of domains discover new revenue streams, drive business success, and increase operational efficiency. And during our live stream today, our expert speakers will cover the topic of IoT software evolution, evolving products, boosting revenue, and reducing operational costs. By the way, if you have any questions on the topics of our presenters today, feel free to actively participate in the session and ask your question in the chat section. Our speakers will both have the Q&A sessions at the end of their reports, and you will be able to get your questions covered. And I suggest that we start with our first speaker, Maksym Moskvychev, who has over 15 years of engineering experience. He's currently leading the architecture and consulting unit at Yalantis, and he is keen on implementing the most effective IT infrastructure processes and architecture processes by applying architecture design methodologies. Maksym will tell you what business value technical assessment brings to a legacy system, best practices for architecture assessment, and processes and structure in conducting architecture assessments. So Max, please take the floor.
Thanks for introduction. So as Victor introduced it today, we will talk about technical assessment or architecture assessment, and we will have some overview in the beginning about what is architecture assessment, why it's needed in general, for what kind of businesses it's needed, for what kind of problems it's needed, and what are the business markers to understand when your business needs technical assessment. Then we will also discuss actually how we perform assessments, what are the processes, what tasks are done actually during this work. And in the end, we will talk about some deliverables, or what business achieves in the end of the technical assessments, which artifacts, etc., and how those artifacts can be used further. So starting from overview. So why in general we're talking about technical assessment? So technical assessment, we can rephrase, it's about understanding of your technology. By technology, here it's meant that it is a development, is existing software systems, and technical assessment covers points like effectiveness and efficiency of development, efficiency of processes, and in general, any other factors that can affect efficiency and effectiveness of your development. So in other words, software technology assessment is comprehensive evaluation that provides some valuable insights of health and performance of your software department, of your software development. And also, because we do technology assessments for business clients, we represent results of technology assessment in a format understandable for non-technical stakeholders, so that everyone in the company is aligned. Next section, let's discuss what are the markers for the business when they need an assessment. So there are some markers on the screen. We will discuss them and maybe even a bit more. So the first marker I'd like to discuss, it's market when market became more competitive. So when competition is growing, then for business it's important to keep up with competition and grow their competitive advantage. And one of the competitive advantage can be on the technology side, so that because of better technology they get more clients, more customers, and win this competition. It's, for example, a good example this year with ChatGPT starting growing, starting more popular, and in some business areas, because of some companies became using ChatGPT, they became more competitive. And for other companies, it's just an example, but yeah, for this example, other companies to get not to lose competition, they also need to do the same or even something better. Then another marker, it's time to market delays or tight deadlines. Sometimes we have a tight deadline to deliver something for release to production or to prepare for some big event for customers which was advertised, and we cannot miss those deadlines. And in this case, technology assessment really helps to be sure that we will do it in time, because part of the technical assessment is also to understand all the risks that we have, make mitigation plan of the risks, and actually mitigate the risk as much as possible. Then another marker is operational inefficiency. It can be in costs of hosting, for example, or in costs of development. We see that probably it takes too much efforts or too much money to cover all the hosting costs or development costs, and we believe that, or clients believe, business representatives believe that it can be minimized. And yes, technical assessment can give answer to this question. So after assessment, we can understand what exactly can be reduced, which costs can be reduced. Then another thing, it's a strategic alignment. In some big companies, when technology is not the primary focus, there could be misalignment that some stakeholders think that something is achievable with technology, but that is actually not. And technology assessment can resolve feasibility questions. So what is feasible to achieve this technology and how much it will cost? And after this information, business stakeholders can align finally, do they want this project or not? Another marker, can be vendor lock-in. And it also a bit relates to competitive advantage. For example, if you're locked with some vendor and basically you kind of resale services from that vendor, you cannot be better than that vendor. And if you want to win competitive advantage, then sometimes you need to be in some ways better than vendor from who you buy services. And understanding those areas and preparing the plan how to achieve those competitive advantage can be also solved with technical assessment. And the last point, but pretty popular nowadays, it's preparation for company mergers or acquisitions. So to be prepared for new buyer of the company or to be prepared for the merge, it makes sense to do technical assessment to make sure that technology department is working good, it's healthy, it's effective, it's efficient. And in the end, the company became more valuable when the technical department is good. If you have any questions, you can leave them in chat, and then I will answer all of them. But we will go further. So next slide. What are business benefits of having technical assessment? So the one of the biggest benefits, it's minimize uncertainty. So on this diagram on the right, it's uncertainty in estimate. And it says then, for example, when there is some project idea, and it's in many cases, when it's big project, it's very hard to give the exact estimate how much time this project will take. And also this chart illustrates that after the discovery phase, it's terminology that describes that we will dive deep into the request and we will understand what exactly can be achieved and how. So technology assessment is one of the forms of the discovery. So after technology assessment, we reduce uncertainties significantly, and in many cases after technology assessment, we can be much more sure about our estimates, and variability of estimate become much less. So, and actually the most of the projects, especially the complex projects, make sense to start them from the discovery or from the technical assessment. Technical assessment, it's needed mostly when it's existing business with a lot of services, with a lot of technology already in place. So we need first to understand what is baseline architecture, what is happening currently, and then think about future. And yeah, discovery, it's more applicable for new projects when client has nothing and they want to do it from scratch. But the idea is the same. Another business benefits described on this slide. So number one is identifying technical debt. What is technical debt? It actually can affect the cost of the project significantly. For example, to the technical debt, we can add some proof of concept, for example, some and some other activities that needs to be done beforehand. As an example, there is some service in cloud provider, and the DevOps team wants to implement this service, but they don't have experience with this service, and we plan that in the project we will use the service. So the proof of concept that needs to be done in this case is to that the DevOps team try this cloud service in order to understand how it works, whether it fits our needs or not. Because if don't do it beforehand, then when development teams come to use it and the DevOps team also will try to implement the service, it could be that it will not work out and we need to find another solution. But at that moment, developers already wasted some efforts, wasted some time on wrong implementation, and it's not good. So what is good is to have some technical roadmap with technical debt, plan those activities beforehand, and this is like one of the way of risk mitigation. Yeah, number 3, risk mitigation. It's about the same thing but from another perspective. So after understanding the risks of the solution, you can plan mitigation, plan for every of the risks, and for some of the risk mitigation plan can proof of concept. For other risks mitigation plan could be to change the solution to avoid those risks, etc. About cost efficiency, we spoke already, so it's about that technical assessment can also evaluate costs for hosting and plan the hosting in a way that it will be more cost efficient. Technical assessment can also evaluate the choice of third-party vendors which are used in the system to choose vendors which are more cost efficient. It's also about quality assurance, about some future-proof solutions to make sure that what we are developing now will bring us competitive advantage for a long period of time, etc. But yeah, benefits are not limited to these ones. There are much more benefits from technical assessment. It's just 6 examples. So let's talk about assessment goals. We separate that into product goals and technical goals. We separate that also because in most of the cases, technical assessment performed by a team of engineers, not by one engineer, and there are technical engineers like architects, developers, etc., and there are representatives of business. It can be business analysts, can be subject matter experts, etc. And so you will be able to read those items in the recording, but from the high-level perspective, the most important deliverable from product goals, it's define project scope and prioritization of project scope. From technical perspective, the most important is to build the target architecture solution, and also the common goal of product and technical, it's to build roadmap with budget and also with risks. So that in the end of the technical assessment, so we take into account all the business goals that our stakeholders want. We prepare that solution from technical perspectives, like which microservices to build, what infrastructure should be, what is technology choice, etc. We build solution from product perspective, so we build scope of the project, priorities, define functionality, high-level requirements, and in the end we combine all that into roadmap and into budget calculation, like how much would it take to implement everything the client wants. Now we will talk about some details, like how exactly we perform technology assessments. So there is a 3-phase approach, and assessment is one of those 3 phases. So assessment is phase number 1, when we understand baseline architecture, or as this situation, we define based on some architecture drivers target situation or to be a situation, and then we also build roadmap, project scope, etc. Then there is implementation, when developers follow the plan that we prepare during technical assessment and implement the functionality. Also, there could be some governments, implementation governments, things in this phase in order to make sure that architecture is implemented as it was planned, that scope was implemented as it was planned. And there is then next enhancement stage when business stakeholders analyze what we have achieved and plan the future iteration. Future iteration can again start with assessment in case it's complex, in case it's more simple enhancements, they just go directly to the implementation. And now about assessment flows or about the first phase. So from which steps it consists. And so the first step is to define business goals and requirements. So there could be different requirements, and to structure them, we separate them into business goals. So it's like high level what business wants to achieve after the assessment and after the implementation of what can be planned during the assessment. For example, business has some goals to deliver some functionality, I don't know, in half a year, and they perform technical assessment. So what they want to achieve in half a year, it is the business goal. Also, that could be some non-functional requirements, quality attributes. There are some constraints. Typically, clients has constraints in budget or constraints in time. They could be also architecture concerns, like some technical things that needs to be taken into account, and without taking that into account, it will not be possible to achieve the functionality, etc. So all that are these architecture drivers, and those are collected on step 1. Then on step 2, we analyze the current situation. So we draw baseline architecture. Baseline architecture, it's about what client has at the moment, and we draw that on multiple levels. It's business architecture, like how high-level services are connected to each other. Then it's data architecture, like what we store in database, is it encrypted or not, and how this data is shared between services. And then it's about technology choices, like what programming languages is used, frameworks, etc. And the last level is infrastructure, like how exactly is deployed in cloud provider on-premise, what is network diagram, what is service diagram, etc. Next step number 3, it's to define quality attributes and quality attributes scenarios. So quality attributes, it's something that can be made out of non-functional requirements, and quality attributes, it's actually a way how to evaluate quality of the solution that we developed. For example, one of the most common example of quality attributes, it's performance. Performance of backend, for example. And we can define quality attribute scenario is that our API performance should be, I don't know, 200 milliseconds when there are 100 requests per second to our server, and when our database, I don't know, 10 gigabytes. And that should happen during 1 hour. And if during 1 hour we have 1 request per second, then an average response time should be 200 milliseconds. So those is quality attribute scenario, and it defines how to measure the performance in a way that we agree for the project. And this quality attribute actually evaluates the quality of the solution, because in case our API responds in 200 milliseconds or less in this scenario, then quality of the solution is good. In case performance of API is less, for example, 500 milliseconds or 1 second, then quality is less than we expected. And the same way can be achieved with other quality attributes. Then step number 4 is analysis of codebase, of infrastructure, of everything that has client, in order to build target architecture and recommendation based on what client has, in order to reduce efforts. For example, in case client has some already parts of the code, it's better to reuse them in case it's possible. And then step number 5, It's actually to document our target architecture, document what recommendations we give to client, what he should do. And number 6 is to present assessment results, present recommendations, present our roadmap. And then, yeah, it's up to client to implement something from the roadmap, not to implement, implement with which provider, with internal developers, or with us, or with other company. Let's go further. So this is example of the roadmap for the technical assessment. So most of the technical assessments that we did were either 2 or 3 weeks. So for more complex projects, it's 3 weeks. For more simple projects, it's 2 weeks. And this is how it could be. So on the left, you see different roles that are engaged during the assessment. In the top, there are weeks and days of the week. So what we have from the roles, we have BA, it's business analyst, and then we have technical team. Technical team is architect and experts. It can be developers, DevOps, etc. So in the end, we define business goals and do requirements collection. And then business analyst is doing requirements refinement, preparing user story map, and other product documentation. During this time, architect together with experts analyzing current architecture, then architect define quality attributes, and then architect together with experts are defining target architecture, like how it should be when we finish the project. They write down recommendations, write down architecture decisions, building blocks, etc. And yeah, in the end, we present the report to the client. And interaction with client is actually pretty frequent. It's not represented on this slide, but in most cases, maybe in the first week, interaction with client is needed every day. From week 2, maybe every second, every third day, we need interaction with clients because there are a lot of questions which needs to be resolved, and without that, assessment will be delayed. Okay, let's go further. This is about the first step, how we define like requirements, technical requirements out of business objectives. So this is a thing which I explained briefly already. So now I will explain one more time. So there are different levels of drivers, of architecture drivers for the assessment. So it all starts from business goal, which comes from the client. It can come from indirect way or not indirect way. In case it doesn't come from client in direct way, then it's our task to define it, to discuss with the client and write down the exact business goals. Then out of these business goals, there are also some architecture drivers or assessment drivers. And from what it contains, there are constraints. So constraints can be limitation of clients. For example, I want to achieve this in 2 months or in 6 months. Then it could be constraints regarding the budget, some limitations that client wants to spend for the solution, but he don't have money or don't want to spend more money for the solution. It can be quality attributes and NFRs, which we discussed already. It can be features and use cases. So use cases, it's more like high-level thing, and features, it's more like detailed explanation of functionality. And on the right, there are quality attribute scenarios. It's about how to validate quality attributes and architecture concerns. So in the end, taking into account all the things above, we design the system. And here is example of architecture concerns from the previous slide. So what can be in architecture concerns? So there are some general things and specific for the project. So in general things, design and system context. System context is terminology from C4 model. So system context, it's about like what third-party services should be used in the solution, whether to implement most functionality with software development or to use some existing SaaS, open source solutions, etc. Selecting reference architecture, pick up some programming languages, etc. The specific concerns are more defined by the project itself. One of the popular specific concerns is cross-cutting concerns. So the cross-cutting concerns it usually included things like logging, how we work with log files, it's alerting, monitoring, some observability, ability to do customer support, etc. So it's defined basically from previous slide, it was architecture drivers, and architecture drivers define which concerns with which architecture concerns should we have. And now let's talk about assessment deliverables. So there are deliverables by project manager, business analyst, solutions architect, and domain experts. So what project manager is doing during the assessment? So it's basically communication plan, collaboration plan with client. It's risk register and also building the roadmap when assessment is being finished. And then for business analyst, deliverables are evaluation of business context, checks whether it's feasible from legal perspective, whether it's feasible from regulatory perspective, whether we need to have some certification in order to implement this project or this part of the project. Then it's about some solution assumptions, dependencies, constraints, etc. And yeah, that's it. And then regarding the solution architect, non-functional requirements, it's actually shared responsibility between solutions architect and business analyst. It's defining technology stack, it's defining architecture, target architecture, baseline architecture, and making trade-off and risk analysis of his solution, etc. And then also we have domain experts who added to the assessment team with some exact purpose. For example, in case we need to analyze some code base and it's a pretty big amount of work, then we engage some engineers who can analyze it. Or for example, in case, I don't know, it's maybe some IT system which needs some expertise of how exactly, by which protocols some devices can be connected, then it can be a domain expert which has experience working on project with those devices. They know, and he knows capability of those devices, and he can design system with those devices. It's a high-level overview of the deliverables from the assessment. So one is assessment document. So assessment document include things like architecture drivers, so all that things like business goals, constraints, concerns, quality attributes that we discussed previously. So it all will be defined there. Also in assessment document, it will be architecture diagrams of baseline architecture and also on target architecture and on multiple levels. It's business level, data level, infrastructure level. So it's 6 diagrams in total. Also, it's technology choice, also risks and trade-off analysis with risk register and mitigation plan for the risks, and also roadmap and roadmap is separate thing. Then another next deliverable is user story map. It's prepared by business analyst, and user story map gives a good overview of functionality and the scope of work. User story map is also split by applications, and it's a way how like the most effectively and efficiently to discuss the scope. So instead of discussing scope on individual tickets, better to see how it looks like on user story map, and then it's much more efficient. Business requirements already discussed it, and then roadmap. It's like what parts of the project, what parts of the scope will be implemented after what. Also, roadmap includes the specialists, like which engineers we need to have, how many engineers, which engineers needs to be added on what day of the project or on which month, etc. And also the budget, it's also part of the roadmap. And yeah, in the end, to wrap up today's meeting, so in which cases so in which cases we need assessment? We need assessment when there are certain business markers, which we discussed. So when there are some markers that development is not effective, not efficient, that we need some improvements, or we need to get competitive advantage, etc. Then the approach is that we define baseline architecture, we define target architecture, we take into account all architecture drivers, we take into account risk and trade-off analysis, we take into account the scope and user story map, and in the end we build roadmap. And some highlights, some numbers. So assessment usually takes 2 or 3 weeks. There are typically 4 engineers engaged into assessment, and more than 10 artifacts is presented in the end as deliverable to the client. That's it. Thank you.
All right.
Let's see what questions do you have, and let me answer them.
Yeah. Yes. Let me also please jump into the conversation. Thank you so much, Max, for the presentation and the detailed dive into the architecture assessment. We actually have some questions. Let me just read them out to you. The first question is, people are asking for statistics. Based on the client requests, how often do you have to rebuild a legacy system into a new architecture from scratch? That would be the first one.
Build legacy system to new architecture from scratch. Well, in most cases, I would say in 100% cases, it's combination. So established company always have some parts of the business, some parts of the software, which is good enough to keep it. And so we try to keep as much as possible, and then some parts, some services we replace with new ones, also because of new business requirements. There are some small companies who don't have their software products at all. For example, they use combination of SaaS services plus a bit of Excel. So it's like very manual processes. For that companies, yeah, we built some systems from scratch. But for other, in case they have some in-house development software, yeah, we always keep it.
I see. Thank you. There are some more questions. The next one is, I guess, about the strategy of legacy systems. In the long run, which is more cost-taking, supporting a complex legacy architecture or rebuilding and maintaining a new one?
Yeah, in long run, of course, not only in long run, but in general, better to review architecture from time to time with architecture assessments, or maybe with some more simple ways, and to try always to go to updated target architecture, because something that was designed, I don't know, 2 or 5 years ago, they don't meet current market needs. So something is changed, some business goals changed, some situation on the market changed, some new competitors arrived. And it's better to review architecture either once per year, and for some more effective companies to review architecture 4 times a year, so every quarter. And based on the updates, you then perform new development to build new software in order to achieve the new updated architecture. Don't try to follow some architecture that was defined 2 or 5 years ago.
Thank you. And the very last question, I guess it's about the industries. which types of companies usually request the architecture assessment from your experience?
Yeah, from my experience, we had a few cases when the question is about business areas or about the reason why they request architecture assessment.
I guess it's more about the business areas. Yes, people are looking for more statistics and information about are there any patterns, for instance, can you say that some of the IoT manufacturers need to revise their architectures more often, or should there be some, say, supply chain management companies or some kind of manufacturers, plants that are requesting these architecture assessment processes more often than the others?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, talking about the IoT, yeah, we had few architecture assessments this year, and from IoT domain, or some of them also from security and IoT, because after IoT devices and cheap IoT devices appeared on the market, there are a lot of ideas, so many people has ideas how to apply that, and it's unlimited amount of ideas, and they want to implement better approaches to do something more and more for their customers, for their clients. But it's not only limited to IoT. There are clients who ask for assessment from healthcare industry, from logistics, from fintech. Actually, it's a lot this year.
Thank you so much.
One more thing, it's very actually also popular to ask technical assessment companies or like divisions of companies who are working with data. It can be business intelligence, or it can be machine learning data. And for those companies, it's especially needed to do technical assessments, because nowadays technologies how to work with data, how to work with business intelligence are changing every year. So every year we get better and better approaches, cheaper and cheaper solutions. And in case companies continue to support some tools which they have chosen 5 years ago, they just waste money. They can have much simpler solution, much more cost effective, that needs much less developers to support it. And because of that, they come.
That's great. Thank you so much for these insights. I guess we can already get the idea of first of all, of the regular architecture assessment procedures that are actually necessary to most of the businesses once in a couple of years. And for some particular industries that are constantly working with data, with AI, with machine learning, these particular companies actually require it a bit more often. And of course, for those who are looking for cost optimization opportunities as well, right?
Yes.
All right, Max, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm sure there will be even more questions later on, but unfortunately we're pressed for time and we need to move on to our next speaker.